Hey, it's me, it's Jeff Ramos, and I'm here to talk to you about this picture and also how to deal with art you make that you don't like when you're making it. So I did this picture earlier today. It's a four color piece, which I thought was really fun to do. But as I was doing it, I was kind of struggling. I really didn't like what I was doing, and yeah, it turned out pretty good at the end. You'll see when we show you the time lapse, it's totally different when I start it. And so there's two things I wanted to talk about. Is how to get over the hump when you're working on a piece of art and it's more frustrating than rewarding, and how do you work past it, or should you work past it? And then just some of the things that I thought about while I was doing this. And it's a bit of a tutorial on also four color pixel art. Again, I'm not in love with this. It's still okay, but it's still a learning process either way. So let's go to the time lapse. Okay, so here we go. This is Aseprite. It's the application I use on Windows to make pixel art. So I start off, when you're doing a four color palette, you obviously want to have your lights and your darks kind of scale up. In most cases, I never use a sort of totally dark color, like an absolute black or whatever. I usually pick a dark value of whatever color I'm working with, in this case, sort of a purple range, and then I work from there. So in some cases, I'll go darker, but I kind of like this as a background color. So the way I think of it when I'm doing a four color piece of art is that there is basically the background or the darkest color, which would be the one on the bottom, then sort of a base color, which is the second one from the top, and then the one above it would be the highlight color, and then the one below that would be sort of the primary shadow color. And obviously you can use the black, or sorry, rather the darkest value as also a shading, but in this case, that's how I think about it. So you're really in a way working with three colors or three shades, and then kind of using the fourth one as a fill-in some cases. So you saw I took a sort of more of a traditional illustration approach. I kind of did a very rough idea of what the head looked like. Then I sort of put guidelines for where the eyes would go and where the center of the face was going. So I usually do that to start in some cases when I'm doing something that ends up looking a little bit more illustrative than more pixely. And so from there, I started deleting, or rather erasing, the lines that I, don't need anymore, and just started tightening up the lines here. And as you'll see when I'm going through this drawing, I do a lot of revisions. I keep kind of going back and forth between what I want to do. And I was looking at a reference photo when I was drawing this. Problem is when you're doing pixel art too is that, you want to go. The idea of pixel art is to sort of minimize what you want to do. And at the very tail end of the drawing, you'll see that an individual pixel makes a big difference, especially when you're doing something that's at an angle. I don't know why I decided to do the sort of angled face. When you're doing angled stuff in pixel art, it's actually really difficult sometimes, and it gets a little harder than it should be if you're doing something sort of straight on, or at a different perspective. So you'll see, yeah, a lot of times I'm kind of going back and forth, and I did this when I was not in a good mood, which is really never the time you should be making art. You should be making art when you feel inspired, when you feel energized. I was even listening to a playlist that I typically get excited listening to, but when I was listening to it, I just didn't feel anything. I didn't feel jazz. Like certain songs that get me motivated didn't get me motivated. And honestly, I should have just stopped drawing for the night. I should have just relaxed and watched TV or something. But I'm trying to make art every day, and when you're forcing yourself in a way to do something every day, there's going to be days where it's not good, and you're going to get mad at yourself. You're going to, doubt your capabilities, but you have to think realistically. Like, you're doing something when you're not in a good mood, so how can you expect that the art will be good, right? But it's something that I convince myself of and try to force myself to do, and that's not necessarily the healthiest way to create art. Again, you should be happy, you should be motivated, you should be really psyched to make something. And I'll be the first person to admit that I'm not always happy, as happy as a person that I try to be. I'm not always happy, and sometimes I feel bad, or I'm tired. Today it was thunder snowing, so it was just like the weather was bad, and the weather gets bad. I get sort of like a little depressed, which is a natural thing. I think most people get bummed out when the weather's not good. But I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it, but I really was motivated to do something. And actually spent an early part of the evening doing another piece of art that was sort of like started off good, and it just started snowballing and getting worse as I did it, and I couldn't save it, and it just ended up getting really frustrated with it. And I took a little break, looked at some like weird YouTube videos and stuff, and went back and said, I wanted to do art tonight. I'm gonna try to do something else. And then naturally, I did something I haven't done in a while, which is a four color piece of art. So I was challenging myself unnecessarily. Like no one's holding a gun to my head to make more art. No one's expecting me to release art every day, but this is something that I'm motivated to do, and I want to try doing it. And yeah, sometimes you have to. I think the healthier thing to do, like, because really I'm trying to do art because I want to improve, I want to become better at it. But and for me, it's a healthy thing. Like I love making art, I love learning new things, I like pushing myself. It makes me feel good to know that I'm learning, and that's great. But when you're not succeeding, or where your mind is not in a place where you feel happy and comfortable doing it, you should just stop. You should just end the night. And again, like there's this weird, I don't know what the psychological term for it is, but when you invest time in something, you feel like you have to stop. You have to keep going. Like if you're watching a bad movie or you're watching a bad show, like as much as you hate it, you feel like you have to finish it because you started it. And that's sort of how I felt when I was working on this. I was like, well, I'm ready this far. I'm already recording the time lapse. Let me just get it done because what I did earlier today I wasn't happy with. And that's like, it's not, in hindsight, and I know that now, like it's just not a healthy mindset to be creating anything in. And especially when I use art as a means to feel better about myself. When that when the process isn't working, I feel like A, I'm failing myself as an artist, and B, I'm not making myself happy. I'm like actively sabotaging how I feel about myself, and that's just not a healthy way to make anything, or little, it's not a healthy way to be. It's not a healthy way to make art. And so even then, as I was working on this, I really just really wanted to push myself to get it done, and I was convincing myself that like, you can do it. You're smart. You're creative. You can save this. There's a thing that Stephen King said, and I might uh, I'll paraphrase what the saying is, but he had this quote that says, "Write the door closed, then rewrite the door open." And it's something that I was always stuck with me when making art, or when I'm writing, or when I'm doing anything. What you start off doing is not going to be good. And you talk about writers who have first drafts, right? Like the first draft of anything, regardless of how good of a writer you are, is never good, right? Like because you're whatever headspace you're in, you're just kind of getting the story in place, and that's what editors are for. The editor is there to help you tighten up the idea and sort of see the blind spots you did think of when you were too busy writing. And same thing with art, at least, and pixel art's really good at this too. That there's not much to fix, so to speak, right? Right, like every pixel, especially when you're drawing something like this, which is 100 by 100 pixels, right? There's not a lot of real estate to begin with. But when you make mistakes, or you need to radically change something, which you'll see later, I sort of totally redo the mouth and the side of the face. Right, there's not a lot you have to change. Whereas if this is where like if this were a pencil illustration, that'd be a totally different thing. So the thing I kept reminding myself as I was working on this is that like let me just work the pieces that I like, that are feeling good, and I'll fix the pieces that I don't like, that are not working for me. And so like that was the motivating factor that got me through the drawing. But there's a lot of times you'll see like I'll do something, I'll erase it, I'll delete it, and like, or I'm just like not paying attention and I accidentally fill in something instead of drawing, filling in with color instead of drawing, and like silently, or like softly cursing to myself. Thankfully, like there's no audio of me in the recording of this, but so at least for me, that's what I was thinking to myself. Like, hey, I'm just going to keep going, and I'll start tightening it up. And at the end, objectively, like it turned out better than maybe I would have done otherwise, because I was so dedicated to fixing it and sort of improving on it. And there's like little things I like that I fixed. There's definitely a handful of moments that you don't see because it's a time lapse, but like literally just sitting at it and staring at it and saying like, what is wrong here? What don't I like? And the teeth were like something that like I didn't know what I was doing when I first did them. So they look they were fine at the time, but they look really whack right now. But You can see there actually is a really funny mistake here. The zombie has a little mole on its face because I accidentally clicked on this face, and it took me a while to notice that it was there, and I thought it was funny. Um, and so there, so like, that was a moment where I looked at it, and I was trying to find areas that needed some definition, so I just drew in some wrinkles in the forehead. But you'll see, it takes me a couple tries to get it right, because I'm just like, at this point, I'm just like really frustrated and just kind of flying through it, which is like, again, not a good way to make art. A good thing that Aseprite does have is that you'll see there's a little thing that says pixel perfect on that menu bar there. So what it tries to do is tries to smooth out the lines, so to speak, and sort of try to make a more natural curve that makes sense with some of the methodologies that make good pixel art. So obviously in pixel art you can't have curves. So when you're doing a curve, you might have like, one pixel diagonally, one pixel diagonally, one pixel diagonally, then a row of two diagonally, a row of two diagonally, then a row of three, and that sort of makes a nice curve. So Aseprite tries to fix that if you're just kind of doing a sweeping stroke. But even obviously it's not perfect, and so especially when you're doing really lazy strokes on the canvas, it'll kind of it'll do its best. But you should take your time and kind of make the lines look right. So I guess to talk about what's happening here, because I didn't really talk about process at all. You'll see at one point I totally took out this weird. So in the reference photo, there is like a big. The zombie had like its skin ripped off near its mouth and like kind of under its nose. It looked really gnarly, which is I could have done that, but I didn't feel like doing it that way. So when I was adapting it the first time, it came out a little bit whack. So I had to redo it here. I think it came out better. You'll see here now I'm like totally just redrawing the entire jaw and decided to give it more of a sort of wiggled jaw thing just to make it give it some better dimension, because I like the way that top row of teeth came out, even though actually the perspective is a little bit wrong if you think about it. But I just wanted to make it look a little bit, give it a little bit more of some motion, because it felt a little just straightforward before. And so you'll see, like if you see on the little preview window that's on the right there, which I like doing because it shows me sort of what it would look like at a fixed size, and then obviously on the main canvas I'm zooming in and zooming out when necessary. And so again, that second color from the top is the sort of base color, and then the one below that is the sort of shadows, which gives most of the definition in the drawing there. And you'll see in some cases, obviously, around the line of the eyes and the nostrils and the mouth, I use a black to sort of fill in the darkest areas of the face. And so now I'm just kind of reconstructing the side of the head, giving it a little bit more, some more motion, kind of giving the head a little twist. Because before it felt a little straight on, even though the angle of the head would actually prefer this sort of skinnier profile. So I kind of like the way it turned out at that point. And then after that, I'll get into the sort of like neck and the shoulder part, which I just like gave me such a bother at the end. I was just so frustrated with the drawing at that point. I just wanted to get it over with. But yeah, I mean the reference photo, because in the reference photo the zombie's wearing like a full outfit and everything. So in any case, just to sort of get to the end of what I was talking about with working frustrated, I don't necessarily think it's a healthy way to go. And for people like me, at least, who are, for one reason or another, constantly pushing themselves, I think that's good. I mean, I value that part of my mentality where I constantly want to push myself, I constantly want to learn. But you only have so much energy in a day, and a day like today where the weather wasn't great, and I had a big thing of Pringles, which I shouldn't have bought. Like, right, like, sometimes you're just not set up for success on certain days. And, again, like the weather is bad. I didn't eat good today. And so that's my fault. And I should have just been like, man, I'm not really feeling it. I shouldn't really push myself to draw something. Like, I should just relax tonight and watch some TV or play some video games or something. But again, I'm hyper motivated in some case, for some, for better or worse. And I guess this evening, at least for the worse, just because I wasn't happy with myself. And yeah, I think the best thing to do is, you can keep going, but be mindful that like you're pushing yourself at that point, right? Now you're not doing it for the fun of it or for the love of what you're doing. And now you're just like actively pushing yourself. And in some cases, you can never break through. And again, I think, I could have at some point just stopped the drawing and, called it quits and come back to it tomorrow or something. But I really wanted to finish it. And I guess, and, it objectively, it came out better, I guess, because I kept on like rethinking how I wanted to, what changes I could make. But those things came at the cost of, right, like not feeling happy, not feeling good about myself. And again, I guess it's fine because the lesson is still there that you're like, hey, sometimes you should just really just call it quits for the night, or sometimes you should really just relax. And I personally don't like to relax, which is weird. I like doing stuff. I like being in a position where I get to, I have the privilege of being able to relax at the end of a work day, and I can choose to just relax, or I can choose to push myself, further myself, learn something, and it's a privilege I like to take advantage of because I can, and I think it's good, but I think sometimes right, I take it too far, and not every day is a day where you're learning something or pushing yourself or growing. It doesn't have to be, at least, right? It's same thing like working out. Like, you don't have to work out every day to get the benefits of it. Like, I've been, working on art most of my life, and there was big stretches of time where I didn't make any art at all. I was, whether it was too busy working or just burnt out or whatever. I can go months or years without drawing. And I didn't miss this. I mean, I obviously had to sort of reacclimate myself to making art, but like, I remember there was a huge stretch of time where I didn't do art for a really long time. Like, my life was in a different place where I wasn't really doing it. Then when I came back and I was like, oh, hey, I still can kind of draw. That's weird. That's cool. And so I don't think you ever lose it. I just think, like your muscles, like you shouldn't push yourself. And I've been, lately I've been trying to draw every day, which is good, But yeah, like no one's forcing me to. I don't have to for my work, or I don't have like a business where I'm doing it, so I don't have to. Again, like no one's forcing me to do this. No one's expecting me to do this. I expect it of myself. But it's something I don't have to do. It's something that excites me, and I get really amped to do it. But it seemed like when I first started rock climbing, I think like the first week or two, I went really really overboard with it and just totally blew all my muscles out, and like like couldn't even like open a can of soda, or like I had trouble like just like unzipping my pants to go to the bathroom, which was the worst feeling because I pushed myself and didn't have to. And obviously as I recognized its effects on my body, I took it easy, and I scheduled it, and then I got stronger, and I didn't have to push myself or hurt myself to do it. So I think it's the same thing with art, right? Like, it's taxing mentally and physically in its own weird way. Like, you still have to think, you still have to apply yourself, you still have to learn and grow, and sometimes you can't do that every day. And I think that's something that I'm learning as an artist, and I hopefully like that's a lesson that other artists can gain from me. That like, you're gonna have bad art days. That's fine. I think everyone has bad art days. I'm just the kind of person who then makes a video about it, but that's fine because again, it's a lesson for as much for me as it is for anyone watching this video. So I think what you can do is embrace those days and realize that like that's fine, and don't think that that's who you are or how you always will create art, because you can look back and see that there was days where you did some phenomenal stuff that really got you jazzed up, but obviously that can't be every day. And even the days you aren't creating anything good, you can still figure out, why wasn't I in the best position to make art today? Why wasn't I feeling good? How did that affect what I tried to do when I sat down to make my work? And I think when you recognize that in hindsight, which I've done now, I finished this a couple of hours ago, you realize I didn't eat well today. The weather was bad. I was tired. And so like that's why I made something I didn't like. And you can choose to push forward or just relax, which I think I probably should have relaxed. Anyways, if you enjoyed this sort of rant, and hopefully you got some advice out of it, hopefully you enjoyed the picture. I think it's fine at this point. I've come to be okay with it. But if you want to see better art, or if you want more art tutorials, you can help encourage me. I promise I won't take your encouragement as a reason to push myself, but you can go to my Patreon. It's in the link right below the video. And hopefully I can teach you folks more stuff, and hopefully you can see some better art than this. I'm just kidding. Now I'm just beating myself up for no reason. But honestly, thanks. Hopefully this helps you out. And hopefully again, it lets you know that it's okay to not have a good day. All right. See you later.